I'm 99.99% sure my 35 meters wife 33F of 14 years has been cheating on me for years. I'm completely broken and at a loss for what to do. I'm sorry in advance for the length of this. I 35 meters think that my wife 33F is cheating on me, and has been for many years. We've been together for 14 years, we've been married for almost 10 years, and we have a 5-year-old daughter together. Incident 1. When my wife and I were in college where we first started dating, we had an incident where she had some really sexually graphic texts from a guy we both knew from school. She even had classes with him. I confronted her about the texts. I definitely didn't handle it well, and basically accused her straight out of the gate as cheating on me without realizing there were some possible outs for her. One of those outs was that she claimed that they were just some pervy texts that she got from this guy out of the blue, and that if I had paid any attention when I was snooping through her phone, that she hadn't actually responded to them. At the time, I conceded that I may have overlooked that possibility, and I had overreacted. She apologized to me for not mentioning to me that some guy was hitting on her like that, and I apologized for overreacting and for snooping. We moved on from there. Incident 2. Fast forward to this last year. My daughter, wife, and I are at the gas station. I can tell my wife is kind of distant and detached from the interactions my daughter and I are having. I notice she's glued to her phone as well. The gas fill for our car is on the passenger side, and I have the rear passenger door open so I can tickle my daughter while I wait for the car to fill up. I'm really suspicious of what my wife is doing at this point, so I decide that I'm going to take a look over my wife's shoulder from the backseat at what it is she's so caught up in. Turns out she is actively in the moment sexting some guy. Like, words, descriptions, acts that very much seem like they've been doing this a while texting, and looking back with 20/20 hindsight, I'm fairly certain they had been fucking as well. Also, all the shit she was texting was super graphic shit, stuff that she never used with me either in dirty talk or when we got intimate, and I know this next admission is pathetic and that it shouldn't matter more than anything else, but that fact that she wanted to share in these acts with this man instead of me really fucking hurt. Probably just my pride talking, but it is what it is. So, fast forward 10 minutes when we get home, and I have to suffer through smiling during dinner and the whole nighttime ritual of getting our daughter to bed so as not to cause a scene by blowing up at my wife for what I had seen her texting. Honestly, that was probably a blessing, because it allowed me to collect my thoughts before confronting her. I end up telling my wife what I saw at the gas station, and right off the bat she tries to play dumb. What are you talking about? Honey, you're making no sense. I told her to not play dumb with me, and I recited some of the texts that I could remember back to her to prove that I saw what I saw. She then goes on to admit that it was a mistake, but that it was 100% nothing physical, and that she was really sorry. She admitted that the guy was a work colleague. We talked a lot that night about why she felt she needed to be doing that. A lot of it boiled down to her feeling depressed and lonely. We talked about strategies that we could invoke at home, things that we both could change, to help mend the rift. I guess things felt kind of okay after that. But it felt like that damage to our trust was already done, and I don't think I've ever really recovered. Even that seemingly small moment of infidelity, assuming that was only text, was just such a fucking hammer to my heart. Ever since that incident from last year, I've been waking up every day as a lesser version of my former self. My emotions and propensity to feel anything have been severely muted. Interacting with my daughter is about the only thing that gets me back close to a baseline of how I remember my former self, but beyond those precious moments, I'm just a walking, grayed out zombie that puts on a good face for pretty much everything for my day-to-day going to work, interacting with my wife, etc. Most recent incident 3. Now fast forward to yesterday. My wife has been gone on a week-long work trip to the East Coast, we are West Coast. I actually had zero suspicions or justifiable reasons to be worried for this trip, because things had been going pretty well between us, and she hadn't really given off any indicators of suspicious behavior. But, my first clue was that when she arrived at her destination, she couldn't get the Wi-Fi working for FaceTime. And, this stayed true for the entirety of her trip. First of all, FaceTime works on cellular data just fine, which we have a ridiculous amount of. I explained that to her, without much of a response. Second, I know that if I were gone for a week from my family, it would be my biggest fucking priority to get FaceTime up and running so that I could see my family's faces every time I called to visit, which would be every single night, which brings me to the next point. She called us in the evening to say goodnight maybe 2 times out of the 7 days that she was gone. Based on previous trips she's had, this was really strange. Normally she is like clockwork, touching in with us to share her day and to hear from us about our day and, again, always on FaceTime. I asked her about that, and she claimed that she was just too tired in the evenings to get back to us. Also, in the past, if she was away me home, she would always text me goodnight and that she loved me, even if we had previously chatted moments earlier on FaceTime or via phone call. For this recent trip, she never texted me once, so, when she got back, my radar was on high alert. Now, I don't feel good about this next part, but when she went to sleep that night, I checked her travel bag to see if my suspicions were correct. Sure enough, to my surprise, she keeps this little red book as a diary in her work bag. I open it up, and there is a date marked 2/9/15. Turns out she'd started writing a poem on that day about our daughter, who had just been born the previous fall. Okay, that's really sweet. I say to myself, and I start to feel bad about my snooping, flip to the next page, and there's a new entry. There's no date, but it's written sequentially right after the aforementioned poem, so I know that I describe here was an entry that came after our daughter being born. This non-dated entry starts off with her describing how much she longs for this specific person, doesn't give his name. She goes on to talk about how she can't stop thinking about him. Every man she sees reminds her of him. She talks about how she never really intended for things to go very far, but that one night that started in the bar, and ended up going upstairs, just felt too right to not be something meaningful. She goes on to say that she doesn't feel bad about making that decision in regard to how it impacts her other life. She describes how she thinks maybe her other life was the mistake. This goes on for pages. That entry ends with her making peace with herself that he moved on from her, and it was time for her to forget about him. I am assuming that her other life, our daughter and me. There was only one more entry after that previous one. I took pictures of it and have typed it out here in its entirety. I'm laughing to myself because I haven't opened this book in over 2 years, and here I am sitting in his bed. In his room at his home. Still feeling angst over so many of the same things. I'll go home after having a week with him and I'll be asking the same questions. Is he ever going to call again after? Was it so stupid to go on this trip? So funny how I thought we'd never speak again, and look where I am. We worked together, we talked almost every day, and he was there for me as a friend. Now here I am. And back with questions. Why were we so hot and cold those first couple of days and then just tapered off? Maybe he's doing that moral compass wrestling, and after I leave we'll never speak again. This trip was probably a bad idea. But we had a lot of fun. And he did say he'd been looking forward to it. He missed me, he wanted this, I know that. I wish he would just tell me he wants me, just me, and always me. It's like we dance around things because he still wants us to have this thing happening despite the rest of my life, and I just don't want to talk about that, to the point that I'm lying, and I hate lying to him. But meanwhile, every tender moment I have with him is so precious I can't believe it. I couldn't imagine we'd actually be snuggling on the couch, and there we were. I haven't slept since reading that last full entry. I haven't confronted her yet, either. It's been almost 48 hours now without sleep, and I'm just an emotional wreck. I just don't know how to handle this situation. I guess I've gotten so good at wearing this zombie mask ever since Incident 2 happened, that I've been able to limp through the last couple of days, but it's getting really hard to be around her. I hopped online and read some guides on how to deal with infidelity, and most of the guides mention therapy. So I'm going to look into that tomorrow. Just filing for divorce isn't so simple. My wife has a serious seizure disorder that is uncontrolled. She can't tell when they're happening, so that puts herself and possibly other small kids, especially our daughter to be exact, in danger. I mention this as it pertains to custody. Imagine she's making dinner for her and my daughter one evening, and she has a seizure near the stovetop, and the house catches on fire? Well, the only adult in the house is lying on the floor unconscious. Or what if my daughter has a medical emergency, but then my wife has a seizure due to the stress of the situation? These are very real possibilities, and ones that I fear could happen if she got custody in any way. Some of those examples aren't too far off from other real-life incidents we've had over the years due to her seizure disorder. She obviously can't drive. Would this factor into a custody dispute? I mean, our daughter is starting kindergarten in a month. How could my wife transport her? I don't know what I'm looking for with this whole rambling post. Maybe just assurance that her gas lighting isn't working? That what I've described isn't the workings of an overly paranoid mind. I feel like one minute I'm ready to file for divorce, and then the next I want to try to salvage things for the sake of our daughter, and just to avoid the awful mess that will be made of all three of our lives if we end up separating. Here's some other logistical details that seem important for anyone who's managed to read this far. We own a house together, have a mortgage. I make about $85,000 per year. She makes around $60,000 per year. We have significant investments that we have joint control over that were given to us by her dad. They total somewhere in the range of $600,000 in stocks and bonds. I'm on wonderful terms with her parents and her family in general. I've always been that son-in-law that was there for everyone to lend help no matter how small or large. All of her immediate family is right here where we live. I have zero family support from my side where we live. My nearest friend is 2 hours away. Thanks for any help in advance. Edit update 1. I left work today in order to start lining things up. I have a lawyer lined up for this Friday. That's the earliest I could find in my area. It's just a consultation, so I'm not sure what to expect from that one meeting alone. Thanks everyone for all of your pearls and especially your daggers. I definitely needed some other perspectives. I know it seems unbelievable that I could go this long, but I've been seriously gas-lit for years now, just conditioned to it. It's also a character flaw of mine to want to see the best in people. I'm just so fucking scared of the unexpected, god damn it. I just hope she admits to it. Is there any way she can twist this around on me? Like invasion of privacy? We are WA state, so I can't record me confronting her without her consent. Redditor's reactions update after this long Redditor's advice. Redditor 1. Just filing for divorce isn't so simple. My wife has a serious seizure disorder that is uncontrolled. She can't tell when they're happening, so that puts herself and possibly other small kids, especially our daughter to be exact, in danger. I mention this as it pertains to custody. You're mistaken here. This actually makes things way easier for you. Definitely consult a lawyer on that, and try to document other times it has been a problem. Chances are you'll get at minimum equal parenting time, and possibly more, or at least the stipulation that someone has to be there with her. Regarding her family, if you get on well with her parents, then that doesn't have to change. You can maintain a good relationship with them, especially if they know that their daughter cheating was the reason for the failed marriage. Couch it in terms of you wanting them to have a good relationship with their grandchild, and you'll buy a lot of support and goodwill from the moral high ground you're left standing on. As for your marriage, when these things occur, there needs to be consequences. When the second incident came up, you should have insisted that she find a new job. Hindsight is 20/20 and all, but it's good to recognize the mistakes you made then so that you won't make them again. Regarding this trip, yeah, you're correct. She cheated. More than that though, she's got this whole other relationship going, and she pretty clearly says that the only thing keeping her from leaving you at this point is that he won't commit to her. That's gotta hurt and suck to hear, but it is what it is. Now you have to deal with what is. So, advice. First things first. Get some sleep. Take a day off from work if you need to. Tell her you're not feeling well. Once you wake up, it's time for logistics. Shove the pain aside. Shove the questions of the relationship and talking with her aside. Right this moment, assume that you are going to divorce her. If that's the case, what is it that you need to do to begin separating your life? Step 1. Talk to a lawyer. Do this as soon as you possibly can, hopefully the same day you wake up from your Odin sleep. Preferably before having the talk with her. There are things you can duck up without knowing it here. For example, you need to not move out of the house. Step 2. If you have joint accounts finances, It's time to open up a solo bank account. You want to have that ready when it comes time to split finances. This can be done the same day you wake up as well. Step 3, she likely knows your passwords. Create new ones that she won't be able to guess and change them on the relevant things that she won't notice. For example, solo credit cards. Take this time to also make sure that your personal things such as your social security card, birth certificate, etc. are secure. Make sure any important computer data is backed up. Step 4, armed with information from your lawyer, work through the logistics of an exit strategy. Look at 2-bedroom apartments that are close to where your daughter will be going to school. Figure out how you'll need to budget and if you have enough loose cash to make a fast transition. Consider what furniture will be needed for your daughter and to make the place livable. Plan on deposits for utilities as well. None of this is to say that you will be the one moving out, but you have limited control over her, so it's good to have this in your back pocket. Why focus on this stuff first? Because fear of the unknown can easily be a driving force in a situation like this. So you, quickly, take every step you can to eliminate fear of the unknown, then you do the same for as much of the fear of change as you can too. Then, step 5, decide on if, and if so how, you might consider reconciliation. Everyone here is going to tell you to dump her ass, and they're not wrong, but it's not always that easy in these situations and sometimes you can waver in the moment. So what you need to do, even if you plan on ending this, is to spend some time thinking through exactly what you'd need from her if you were to allow her the chance to earn trust and forgiveness. To get you started, she first needs to confess everything. If she's going to do that, you should say before you speak, take a minute and decide whether or not you're going to tell me everything here. If you hold back or trickle truth me and I find out there won't be a second chance to confess, I will just cut ties and move on. So if you're thinking of omitting details, just don't bother telling me anything. I already know enough to end our marriage and it's better that it happens sooner than later. Then, of course, she quits her job and finds another. I'd say within a month. If it doesn't pay as much, oh well. She also loses all digital privacy. And, while this may be a controversial one, I'd recommend that her parents be informed of what she's been doing. Shame is a powerful motivator. She's in the cheater's fog right now. Consequences are what dispels the fog. Step 6, once you've done all of that, then you have the conversation with her. Consider privately recording it, if only for your own recollection later. You don't want to be gaslit. Just keep that private, as in some states recording conversations requires two-party consent. I highly recommend starting the conversation off by handing her divorce papers. Shock and awe. Blow her world up. Be as cold and emotionless as you can manage. You can accompany the papers with something along the lines of, I know about you and name. I know what you spent a week away doing. I know that you've been cheating on me emotionally and physically for a long time. I also know that the only reason you're still here is because he hasn't committed to actually wanting a real relationship with you. This is me telling you that I am no one's plan B. I'd like you to move out while we work through the divorce and getting our home sold. She'll react however she reacts there, but you'll have done the prep work ahead of time to know how to handle it. I'd also recommend that her parents find out at some point after that the exact why of your relationship ending. Better to have them at least partially on your side, even if they do have to support their daughter, so that you can maintain a good relationship there. Your wife has taken you for granted. Whether you end it or allow her a chance to prove that she's worth the effort, it's time for that to come to a close. It sucks, but you're standing on the moral high ground here. Handle this the right way and you'll still be able to respect the person looking back at you in the mirror when it's all said and done. She'll always be the person that ruined her loving family and broke her home. Her cheating is a reflection of who she is as a person, not who you are. You've got this. Update. Just wanted to fill people in with where I'm at with everything. Things are actually pretty good right now. We obviously separated after I confronted her. She still hasn't admitted to anything. We sold the house, and now I've got an apartment with my daughter. More about custody later. I'm actually having a blast making the space my own, and it's nice having my own time to myself again. I do have to say that I thought the loneliness would fade a bit faster, but the feelings of desperation and not knowing what to do with myself are still pretty sharp. I've started working out a lot, and I've also gotten back into writing and recording music again, which I haven't done in years. As far as my ex goes, I decided to keep things as amicable as I could for my daughter's sake, and I think it's the single best decision I've made throughout all of this bullshit. By allowing myself to feel all of the emotions I needed to feel before confronting her, I was able to keep rational and calm throughout all of this, and it's really made all of the difference. I can't imagine how awful things would have been on an emotional, legal, and custodial level had I just blown everything up when I confronted her. I've confided in a few close friends about the truth of the situation, just because I needed someone to talk to about all of the BS to make sure I was acting accordingly. But beyond that, no other family knows the situation. To everyone else, we just separated for amicable reasons. Her mom in particular is taking things pretty hard. I feel bad for her. She is struggling to understand what happened. But, that's on my ex to tell her, not me. For custody, while we wait for the divorce to finalize, is that I get my daughter MF since I am the only one that can drive her to school. My ex gets her son from 9 a.m. 5 p.m. My ex's seizures are predominantly in the evening, and it's just not safe for our daughter to be there with her on her own, at least not until she's older. We're gonna work that out and get those details in writing at some point here. Anyway, I'm feeling about 60% good, and about 40% freaked the fuck out now that I'm on my own. At 36, I have no idea how to approach the dating scene, and my confidence is a bit shot to hell right now. I mean, FFS, I haven't given serious consideration to another woman in over 14 years, so, I'm probably just gonna wait for 3-4 months while I get to know myself again, get in better shape, and then see how I feel after that. Not try to put too much pressure on myself to find someone again. If anyone else has any questions, I'll try to answer them. Thanks again for all of your support. I can honestly say that this wouldn't have turned out as well as it did without your help, everyone. Take care. Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1, I'm so proud of you for being so strong throughout this whole ordeal. Nothing about this next part of your journey is gonna be easy, but keep your head up because there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's time for you to prioritize your happiness and begin this next stage of your life. Best of luck. Answer. Thanks. Yeah, I have no illusions about what's coming up next. But for whatever reason, that seems far more surmountable than the emotions and fear I had this whole week leading up to the confrontation. Redditor 2, my heart broke for you reading the original post, but I am glad that you are doing the right thing for you and moving forward. I am so sorry that this happened to you. Redditor 3, dude, congrats. Huge decision moving forward, but it was definitely the right call. Is her family aware of what's going on, and why you decided to divorce her? Either way, I hope the proceedings go well. If the wife ever gets around to admitting about the other guy, and begs for reconciliation, I hope you have the strength to think rationally. Emotions tend to make things harder when going through betrayals like this. Keep strong, and refocus whatever attention you had for the wife for your kid. Answer, thank you, they don't know. For the sake of being reasonable and just wanting this to be over, I told my wife I am on board with just telling our family we don't love each other, we think that we'll make better parents and lives for ourselves not being together. We haven't really talked yet about what we are gonna tell our daughter. I will not be accepting her back if she does admit. There is nothing salvageable here,